Thank you all for coming. My name is Andy Back. I'm the Planning and Development Services Manager for Washington County. We do these development forums twice a year, and we try to change up the topics every time. I want to introduce Andrew Singalakis, who's the Director of the Department of Land Use and Transportation. I'm going to talk briefly, and then as you can see, we have a lot of people here who are also going to be doing a lot of talking. First, I want to talk about the forum purpose. You have principles and goals over there. I'll just briefly talk about the goals. The first goal is just to share information, get things out to all of you that we're working on. The other thing that's important is to get some feedback from you. So we buy all sorts of goodies here with the intent of having you stick around after the formal session just to have informational and informal conversations with you. And the last thing, and probably the most important, is to build productive relationships. We know that the planning and the building process can get tense at times. We know that those relationships really help with the ability to permit projects and just having the ability to know who you are and look you in the eye and have that dialogue is really important. Let me talk briefly at the Washington County side about activity and staff updates. On the activity front, things are still busy. They're down maybe, depending on what variable you're looking at, maybe about 10% from this time last year, but they're still really busy. On the staff updates, I do want to mention a couple of things. Probably the biggest struggle we've had over the past 4 or 5 years is on the plan review side and building, and the problem there is we couldn't find qualified people to do the work. So we're happy to announce that since the last meeting of this group that we have hired 5 new people in the plan review section of Washington County. So hopefully those turnaround times will improve. I'll mention just 2 of them. One is we have a new building engineer. His name is Ying Cheng Lin. So we're happy to have him on board. He's very qualified. And we have a new senior plans examiner. His name is Wayne Parker. So those are 2 names you might jot down. Just a few things for Washington County I want to mention specifically. One is Project Docs, which is the electronic plan review. We're rolling that out for facility permits and engineering, so that's going to be rolled out November 1st. Rob is here if you want to talk to him afterwards about doing the electronic plan review for facility permits. We'll be converting to a new Excella permitting system prior to the next development forum, so you'll get more information about that, but just a heads up about that. And that's about it. I do want to mention one other person. Stacia Sheeler is a person who's worked at the county for quite a long time, but she's now taking a bigger role in assurances and street lining, so some of you may deal with her on those issues. So I'm really pleased to have all these folks from the cities here today. Usually I do a long monologue about the partnership the county has with the development community. Today I'm going to do a shorter monologue about the partnership we have with the cities. There are 595,000 people in Washington County. We have various maps around that show where the cities are. There's about 345,000 of those people in the cities. So if you're doing a project in Washington County, chances are you're more likely to be doing it in the city than in the unincorporated part of the county. So there's 10 cities that are entirely within the county, and there's 5 cities that are partially within the county. And we'll have a trivia question on that later on. We've got really good cooperation and collaboration with the cities historically. I'll talk about a few examples. Washington County does all the electrical permitting for the cities except for Hillsboro, Beaverton, and Tigard in the county. And that's just the nature of the fact that having a staff qualified to do electrical permitting, you need sort of economies of scale, so it makes more sense for the county to do that. I want to mention monthly there's a meeting of the elected officials or representatives of each city in the county. It's called the Washington County Coordinating Committee. They're a group that's chaired by Roy Rogers, and they get together monthly and talk about land use transportation issues, mainly transportation issues. A few examples of things that they've done that really show about the partnership with the cities. The MISTIP program that most of you know about, which is how a lot of large capital road projects, that's been worked out cooperatively with that group. And most of you probably know there's a countywide transportation development tax that was worked out with that group as also. I've spent probably 15 years of my career doing stuff outside of the office at Metro or ODOT or in Salem, and one thing I've consistently heard from folks who aren't in the county is how they're envious about the relationship the county has with the cities. So that's something that I take pride with, and I know other people in the room today also have pride in that. So what we're going to do today is all these folks have been allocated 4 minutes and 37 seconds to do a presentation. At 4 minutes and 17 seconds, I will give my obnoxious wrap it up please announcement in my radio announcer voice. And if they don't wrap it up, the future MISTIP allocations could be, no, that wouldn't be affected. But anyway, I'm not sure we're going to have a lot of time for dialogue back and forth. I asked for you to hold your questions to the end, but you're going to have a lot of new names and faces and people to run to after their presentations. So with that, I think we're going to start off with the city of Beaverton and go eastward from here.
Hi, my name is Lee Crabtree. I am the operations manager for the community development department of the city of Beaverton. I have a background in land use planning at the city as well as private sector before that. So I just give you that history because I've been working in the city for 17 years. The past 3 have probably been the most exciting of all of those years and all of the work that I've done, because we have been working with our staff and our customers and community members with the support, really deep support of our leadership, to figure out what we can do better in our development review process. And it takes all 3 groups. So we have planning, site development, and building, and that is 50 plus staff at any given time that are working to review your requests, give you information, communicate between each other about, are we doing the right thing? And I have to say, 3 years ago, we didn't have a lot of internal communication. We had a lot of communication breakdown. And when we sat down to talk about what our issues are in our development review process, it was our internal communication on our side and how consistent or inconsistent were we being at any given time. And there's always work to do on that front, but out of that work 3 years ago, we came up with an action plan, knowing that we would need to do a number of things. The biggest lift of all is the electronic permitting system. We do not yet have a new electronic permitting system, but what we have done in the interim is we have implemented Bluebeam Review as our electronic document review system. All 3 divisions in our development review process currently use Bluebeam as our form of routing and markup and collaboration in an electronic format, as well as being able to see each other's comments and flag issues earlier than we were able to before. for those of you who may not know what happens on the government side in a paper format, if we ask for limited number of paper copies, well, those limited number of paper copies have to be routed to everybody for review. And oftentimes, if it sits on one desk for a week, then that limits the amount of time everybody else has to give input. So now everybody gets to see the same thing at the same time if they choose to open it. We really do see a lot of improvement. Staff who really were using the very, very basics of electronic anything at the city are now issuing their permits and plan review red lines through Bluebeam. And we're really excited about that. We do not yet require people to submit electronically, but if they choose to, we have Box through our webpage so people can download large files to Box, and then our staff are able to grab those and move them on. As of March 4th, thank you to our friends in planning, Anna Slatinsky, our planning manager, when we were meeting, decided that March 4th would be the day that we would march forth with electronic plan review at the city as the way that we do our business internally. So if we would hope that most people would submit everything electronically, but if they don't, we will scan it in and we will start on March 4th doing everything electronic internally. So I'm going to wrap that up because that's our most exciting thing that we've got going on right now. Beyond the fact that we are going out for a permitting system, that process is starting with bringing on a consultant. But I wanted to point out that Anna Slatinsky, Jana Fox, and Jody Yates are also here from our development review process management team. So thank you.
Good job. You have a minute you can sell to somebody else. Cornelius, take it away.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Wells. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Cornelius. I and my one staff person manage all of the planning, development review, and then we work collaboratively with the City of Forest Grove for all of our building services. I also oversee all the economic development and code enforcement activities for the City of Cornelius. Little city, about 12,500 people just to the west of Dairy Creek. So the world doesn't end at Dairy Creek. There's more over there, as Brian and I will share. So a couple of highlights that we just want to share with you. I think Cornelius has had kind of a bad rap for a number of years about not being very flexible or business friendly, and I just want to share with this group that that culture has changed dramatically since I and actually a predecessor of mine have come to the city. We see the benefit of having a collaborative and productive conversation and relationship with the development community rather than taking on a purely regulatory position of things. So at this point, we've been able to streamline and fine-tune our development review process pretty significantly to the point that for a Type 3 development review process, which would go to the Planning Commission for subdivision, conditional use permit, planning and development, you can get in and out of that process in 8 to 10 weeks in the city of Cornelius. And we recognize that time is money for developers, and so we make sure that we maintain a good level of communication, keep things moving rather than, to the best of our degree, getting bogged down in bureaucratic processes. That is the benefit of working with a smaller city, I must admit. We also boast a pretty flexible plan unit development process. So if someone opts to go that route, they have to have a minimum property size of 1 acre. But once they meet that threshold and show how they are able to create a project better than following, line by line our code, we enter a negotiation phase, and I've really enjoyed that process with a number of the developers because it just allows for so much more creativity and flexibility in the final product, and that's what we want to see. Each project, has its unique characteristics, and we recognize that, and we want to help the development community get to the goals that they have for each project, and we do that through a pretty flexible and creative way so that we can maintain a positive relationship throughout the process. So with that, we've maintained a very proactive, collaborative, and business-friendly environment, both at staff level as well as with our planning commission. They want to see progress in Cornelius. We want to support them in implementing that progress, as well as our city council. So those who encounter us often, remark that the culture in Cornelius is very good to work with, and we take that a lot of pride in that, and we want to continue that. A couple of other just highlights. I do have a handout there at the front desk that I'd like anybody who's interested to take. It includes just some basic information about Cornelius, but also some demographic and market information. For those who might be thinking about expanding to the west, there is a great market in Forest Grove and Cornelius for new development. We're seeing a lot of growth. For example, in Cornelius alone, we've approved subdivisions totaling over 1,100 new units. Right now, we have an existing inventory of 3,300 units, so we're looking at about a 25 to 30% increase in our total unit inventory and consequently our population. So I'd say Cornelius is going through quite a boom right now. But we also still have over 120 acres of commercially zoned land that's undeveloped and over 70 acres of industrial land that's served by utilities yet remains undeveloped. So I'm working very hard on my economic development hat to get the word out and let people know that if they're willing to look a little bit further to the west, if drive time and immediate proximity to the airport isn't necessarily your main concern, there's some great inventory out there in Forest Grove as well. And we encourage folks to come talk to us and see what might be interesting to them in that regard. All of our industrial land is also benefits from our enterprise zone, which we share with Forest Grove. And so there are some pretty significant property tax benefits for eligible types of projects. Lastly, we're in the thick of it right now. We're doing a town center master plan. So Cornelius is, to many people, a drive-through community, particularly when you get into our downtown. It's pretty obvious, not a lot of activity happening down there. We have some great services, Virginia Garcia, Centro Cultural, and our brand new library that's currently under construction. But the private commercial environment downtown is pretty lacking. And so we're working with a consultant team and our community right now to reimagine and redesign our downtown Cornelius. And we're hoping that at the end of 2019, we'll have a new plan adopted, our code revised to support the vision for a new downtown. And on top of that, we're preparing an urban renewal plan so that we have funding to pay for, excuse me, the projects envisioned in this downtown master plan so that we can move forward and just make things happen, public-private partnerships, new public spaces, and transportation and corridor improvements so that it's a more inviting and aesthetically pleasing downtown environment for our community and our visitors.
Great, thank you. On to Forest Grove.
I don't talk nearly that fast, so forgive me. I'm not going to throw as much information at you. But as Ryan said, Forest Grove and Cornelius work closely together. Our shop is a 9-person shop. We have 4 building inspectors who are all very experienced and will treat you right, so to speak. As far as current news, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm the new director at the city of Forest Grove. If any of you knew John Holen, he retired end of last year. I've been there for almost exactly a year now. My name is Brian Pohl. I came here from Tillamook County. I was there for 4.5 years. Before that, Indianapolis, Indiana. And so I've got about 15 years experience, 10 of that at the director level. So this is not my first rodeo, but I am learning the Forest Grove processes. One of the great things about Forest Grove has been exactly how well-oiled of a machine it is. Our planners we have 2 planners, one of whom does current planning, so development review. He's been there for 27 years. You get a ton of consistency with that person, and you'll deal with that person from the start to the end of your project, usually. Of course, he might retire soon, but for right now, I get to put his feather in my cap. But we have a pretty good development review process. I think we're pretty well regarded in that sort of realm. We've had a couple of big projects that have exposed some sort of weaknesses in our process, and that's really kind of the link between public works and the sort of site and the public improvements and everything and the development itself. We'd like to fix those, and we're looking sort of structurally at how. I think it was Lee who talked about the communication is key, and we've seen some communication issues there. And so our public works director is actually retiring at the end of this year. And so we're looking at how we might restructure our organizations to kind of improve that communication. But with that said, we operate at pretty high octane, I think. I think Ryan would say that our building inspections are good, they're consistent, they're fast, it's a good turnaround. So we'll treat you right on the far west side. Just by way of updates, we've done a couple things lately that might interest you guys. Pacific University Master Plan. We recently passed some affordable housing density incentives. It's if you do 20% affordable housing, you get 20 extra units in our community commercial zone. That was a dogfight with our planning commission and city council, but it's over now. It's done. It's in effect. You might know about our Jesse Quinn project, Tokala Properties, and our URA partnered to do I believe it was a 78-unit apartment complex in downtown Forest Grove. It's on the old Times Litho site. That is now just almost complete. I think we're looking at a November opening date. It's a great project. It's a catalyst project for Forest Grove. And on the backside of that, there's the last third of that property, of that site, that our URA will be considering how to develop in the future. Not sure exactly when or what our goals will be for that, but we're going through that sort of visioning right now. The other thing we've got, and that's probably won't sound really impressive for a lot of people in this room, but for Forest Grove it is impressive. We have 3 new major apartment complexes, Forest Place, which is 192 units, Cedar Manor, which is 28 units, and of course the Jesse Quinn project at 78. It's 298 new multifamily units in Forest Grove. That's a big deal for us, and we're going to be interested to see how that sort of plays out as far as affordability, as far as vacancy and everything. And I know that the Forest Place folks would also say that it was a good process here in Forest Grove and would hopefully come back at some point. Upcoming, we've also got, Ryan mentioned their industrial areas and our industrial areas. Near Oak Street, we have, I think it's, 70 acres of undeveloped industrial, its own property that we'll be entering into a master plan on. So look for that if that interests you. Other than that, I think I'm done.
All right, you guys are doing great. I don't have to be mean at all, yet. So Hillsboro, take it away.
All right, good morning. So as Brian was mentioning relative to Forest Grove and their look into the future for structural changes, our city manager recently had that opportunity with the retirement of one of the assistant city managers. So in late August, the city manager rearranged our structure a bit. So now, similar to a lot of our sister cities, we actually have a community development department. And under that umbrella of that department is both planning and building. So previously, those were 2 separate departments. Now they're under the umbrella of the Community Development Department. From there, the structure remains very much the same relative to the teams from building and planning. For planning, we still have a long-range team as well as a development services team, which is the team that I'm on. And within our development services team, we have technicians, planners, myself, and at times interns. So we're trying to balance, a heavy workload and working through that with our sister departments, Public Works, Water, Fire, and the like. And so with a city that's rapidly growing, the city of Hillsboro just peaked over 100,000 people. We were also planning for 65,000 employees that work within the city on any given day. So, there's a lot of coordination going on to facilitate the movement of those folks in and out of our city, whether it's them as a resident or as an employee at one of the companies within our city. So our city manager looked at the structure and felt that the community development department structure was the best way to facilitate that. So, we're working under that now. There's still a fair amount of detail that we're still working through, but that organization is in place. But again, the people and the roles and responsibilities remain very much the same, so that will continue to be. And for our team, we have 2 open positions that we're currently seeking to fill, and my hope is that we have those 2 positions filled within the next month. And from there, we'll have a full team to work through the workload that's in front of us. And we're continuing to harness the technology that we have and the permit software of Acela and Project Docs, but also looking for other opportunities to enhance not only that software, but other software that may be able to help us get through our processes more efficiently and effectively moving forward. And also trying to retain, somewhat of a small town feel with our customer service, which is a very tough balance when you're harnessing that technology, not to use that as the wall, to communicate all times. So, we do try to balance that as much as we can, and keeping up with, not only our internal expectations to get applications turned around, but also, being ahead of the state mandated timeframes. Two primary areas of development activity in the city of Hillsboro right now is South Hillsboro and North Hillsboro. South Hillsboro, we're seeing the implementation of 2 decades of master planning for a community that is hopefully going to house up to 20,000 residents at full build-out with a variety of parks, open spaces, as well as town centers. That implementation is really starting to pick up now. We're working with a variety of development partners in South Hillsboro. We've had a lot of permits being pulled. Street of Dreams was this summer. Some of those properties and other properties within South Hillsboro have already transacted. So we're not only seeing permits, but we're also starting to see transactions and properties selling in South Hillsboro to the end user. So good signs there, even in the executive housing forum. And then in North Hillsboro, that's our primarily the employment land within our city. We're continuing to see a tremendous amount of activity, be it major warehouse expansions, new development there, but then also expansions of existing manufacturing, as well as some commercial support services within North Hillsboro. So that activity remains high. And while those are the two primary areas of development activity, there's still a fair amount of activity occurring within the core of the city of Hillsboro and downtown, and then in areas like Amber Glen, which at one point was a suburban office complex, and that is the plan for that to be reimagined as a activated urban mixed-use spaces coming to fruition. So within those core areas, we're seeing anything from 2-lot partitions all the way up to establishment of 4 new city blocks in Amber Glen that will have multifamily and senior living. So the activity is pretty vast throughout the city currently. And it's a coordinated effort amongst a variety of departments, as well as a lot of the partner agencies, some of which are at the table today, as well as the development community. And some other focus areas are affordable housing, as well as institutional uses like Washington County's Event Center and implementation of the school district's bond measure.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, onward to North Plains.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Varner. I'm the city manager of North Plains. I asked our planner to be here this morning, but unfortunately that's me, so you're stuck with me. But no, we're a small town of about 3,000 people, 6 miles up the road of Glencoe, located across Highway 26. Hopefully everyone's a little familiar. And good news for you, or for some of us, is North Plains is not in Metro. I think we're the only community up here that's probably not in the Metro area, so that's one less hurdle to go through. I'm about 9 months on the job, 9 months new to Oregon, so I'm learning a lot about the land use planning process here too, but I understand that's a good thing if you're sometimes not in Metro for certain development issues. North Plains is small, but like everyone else up here, and I think within the Portland metro area is growing. The couple things that we've really been working on since I've joined is revolving around planning. The city adopted a new housing needs analysis just back in January. Recently adopted a new economic opportunities analysis earlier this month. Is about to adopt a new parks plan next month. The TSP is in process. That'll be adopted early next year, and eventually that's all going to be a new comp plan for the city in early spring of 2019. So that's been a lot of reading, a lot of learning for me, but it's been good, and also shows that North Plains is trying to be proactive, looking ahead to growth and development. The reason for all that planning is because there's several things happening. A lot of it's new housing development. Some of the new 2 areas in town that were already in the UGB were annexed in a couple years ago, and building started happening soon after that in one of the areas. So that's resulted in 200 units being built, 200 housing units being built on the east side. On the north side, area that was recently annexed. We have a pre-application meeting actually this afternoon with all of our partners and the developers. That's going to be about 500 units going in. Some of these changes are prompting new things like this school district bond. There's going to be a new 600-kid school in North Plains. We're building a new reservoir within the next couple of years. And to keep pace with sort of the housing, if you've ever driven through North Plains or been there, you realize there's not a lot of services for community members. There's no grocery store. There's not a lot of business activity, services. So that's really going to be a new push for myself and the city council. We do have an urban renewal district. That's a tool that we could use to maybe do some streetscape project or downtown redevelopment over the next couple of years. That's in the works. Like I said, the town is growing. The population is 3,000 right now, but with even just the proposed developments that we have in, it should increase by 70% over the next 5 years. The housing needs analysis said the city will need about 100 to 120 acres, depending on density, for housing needs, and then up to another 160 acres for commercial and industrial activity. So those are going to be some of the focuses over the next few years. Like I said, North Plains is located pretty well, Highway 26. It's an easy commute into the metro area. Relatively easy, I'm finding out. There's a railroad there. We have 2 interchanges. I think we're primed to see some growth and development. And I think we have considering our shop, we do contract out planning services and land use application services to 3J, and between them and our kind of small staff, we have a decently quick turnaround for our land use applications, considering our planning commission meets once a month, but we always try to accommodate developers, and I think we'll continue to do that as we look to see how we can make things more efficient in our processes.
Great, thank you. All right, next up is Sherwood.
Good morning, everyone. Joy Chang. I've been with the city of Sherwood for about 1.5 years, but before then I was with Washington County for a good 16 years. So a little bit about Sherwood. We have currently, as of 2017, a population of 19,350. We were recently ranked #1 as the safest city in Oregon. So that was as of this year. We're located in southwest Washington County. If you go down Highway 99 or Pacific Highway, before you go to Newburgh, you'll hit us first. So there is, as far as our team, as far as planning team, we're a team of 3. There's actually a planning manager who oversees the current planner, which is me, and a long-range planner. And so pretty much any development that is happening in Sherwood, it will pass through my desk. There's actually a lot of development and construction that's happening. As you probably all know, there's a brand new Sherwood High School. It has broken ground off of Elbert that is a county roadway, so it's impacting county facilities. We actually have now a Sherwood Hotel, Hampton Inn, also along Highway 99. 2 big assisted living facilities, the Springs and Acme, are currently being constructed. I think the most fun project that I've done the last year is the Parkway Village South. It's a commercial development that consists of 92,000 square foot of indoor entertainment and recreation fun center with a 32,000 square foot of retail spaces off of Langer Parkway. In regards to process highlights, we don't have electronic submittal as far as plan review, but I think we have a really great pre-application conference. It's fairly affordable. It's $400 and compared to like the city of Portland, which can be over $5,000. It's an optional pre-app, so it's encouraged but not mandatory. The attendees, I think, are also important. In addition to planning staff, building staff, engineering, public works, our partners, agency partners also attend. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue is typically at the table. And depending on the roadway jurisdiction that is being impacted, we typically have Washington County at the table along with ODOT. because of Highway 99. In regards to long-range planning, we too, along with North Plains, are currently updating our comprehensive plan. We've done a couple of technical background reports, economic opportunities analysis, housing needs analysis, and we're currently doing our visioning. We just recently chosen who our comp plan consultant's gonna be, so that's news is gonna come out soon. In regards to opportunities for development, we have a big area called Tonkin Employment Area, which is zoned for employment industrial. It is inside the urban growth boundary, but it is not currently within the city of Sherwood boundary. So annexation has to occur, but we've had a pre-application conference for areas within that site. In addition, we have Brookman Addition, which is slated for medium-density residential. So there is opportunity there as far as residential housing. That is all that I have, and I have a minute to spare.
Excellent job. Okay, we are on to Tigard.
Good morning, I'm Gary Pagenstecker. Joy, we have a Hampton Inn too.
Oh,
Just about to break ground, and it's been a long time in planning in the Tigard Triangle. But I've been with the city for about 14 years. Some of you recognize me. I recognize Mimi Dukas, who's been probably working in Tigard with various employers over that period as well. The organization of the City of Tigard's Community Development Department includes community planning, building, engineering, and economic development. Or I should say it used to include economic development. We do have some continuation of a 4-year economic development manager successful programs that are ongoing now. But as you know, some of you may know that having economic development capacity in a city, at least our size, has been challenging. So we did manage to fund that position. We no longer have that position funded. However, I'll touch on a few things that were successfully implemented. First, an orientation to the city. It's primarily what we call the Sea of Yellow, which is our residential zones. The city was incorporated in 1961, fairly recently, so a very strong suburban model. And that has sort of continued in spades in our River Terrace frontier on the western side, flanking Roy Rogers Road, south of Sherwood, about a 500-acre development that's been primarily built by Polygon, and that is rapidly taking shape. And they've started from north to south, so there are developments just breaking ground down by Bull Mountain Road and Roy Rogers. But our focus and interest is mostly on our eastern borders, where we have urbanizing mixed-use zones, primarily in the Washington Square area on the north, Tigard Triangle, and the downtown districts. And these areas have been planned for and are just ripe for redevelopment. Downtown has made significant, the city's made significant public facility improvements in its Burnham and Main Streets. Also has recently its first multifamily housing development, 144 units in Atwell off Main on Burnham Street. We have in Washington Square, Macerich is the primary property owner there, owner of the mall. They are involved in redevelopment of parking lot areas and also are involved in assuming the Sears property that, as you know, Sears has gone into bankruptcy, and so that's becoming a hot portion of their, the southern portion of their site there. Also, in downtown, we have in downtown in the Triangle, all three of these districts, and extending south to our industrial districts. We have some incentive programs, an enterprise zone and opportunity zones to incent business development there. We have also urban development, tax increment financing available for both downtown and Tigard Triangle to underwrite public facilities improvements in those locations to support development investment. So we have a legislative work program underway right now that is has headed for council's review January 1st, process and procedures update and public improvement standards update. This is for, revising and sort of an antique code that we've been working on for a number of years, and there are significant resources towards amending that development code underway right now. Some highlights would be that we're going to be providing for missing middle housing in our residential zones, and also our plan development overlay. Much of it was established in the early '80s by legislatively, and that overlay is going to be disappearing. So the plan developments will become voluntary, not prescribed by this zone that was laid out back in the '80s. And then coming up will be, thank you. That gives me a few minutes, or a minute, or I'm done.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. So really exciting, though, is the fact that Tigard is in partnership with Washington County and the city of Portland and Tualatin is the alignment of the light rail, TriMet's light rail line, which will go through the Triangle and downtown. It's controversial at the moment. A preferred alternative alignment has been established, but just on what terms it'll happen in Tigard remains to be seen. In particular, its downtown station location and impacts to its industrial areas are at issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we're on to Wilsonville.
All right, good morning. I'm Kim Reibold. I'm an associate planner with the city of Wilsonville. I'm going to talk about one of our industrial areas in the city and some new development code initiatives that we've adopted to guide development of this area. So fun fact, if anybody is taking notes for the quiz later, Wilsonville is one of the 5 communities that is partially within Washington County. The majority of our area is actually within Clackamas County, but we want to focus on this industrial code because the area that we have within Washington County is generally where a lot of our future industrial employment uses are planned and where we're planned for expansion. With me today also is our senior planner, Daniel Pauly, and he's going to give a very, very quick overview of some unique features of our development process before I get into our form-based code.
Thanks, Kim. And it really continues to be an exciting time in Wilsonville. It's always fun in Wilsonville. We're innovating in a lot of ways. And I could talk forever about what's happening in Clackamas County, but we're going to focus up here in the industrial land in Washington County. But we continue to innovate in terms of working internally. Our that theme you've heard about internal communication, electronic plan review, new permitting software, we're all moving forward on that. Wilsonville is just going to get better. But we have, from the era that we started, we're really heavy on the plan development process. And almost all of our zones are plan development zones. And so with that, we also have this 2-map system where we rely heavily on our comprehensive plan map, and zoning doesn't happen until development. And so we have the zoning and possibly annexation, as well as the bubble diagram level master planning, the functional site design, stage 2 master planning, and then our site design review. And that all happens concurrently. We package it up, get it through the system as best we can, communicating with all the partners. But with that, we really looked in this industrial land in Coffee Creek is how we can better innovate that process, particularly for this industrial land and what we're envisioning it to be. So Kim will cover what we're working on up there.
All right, so Coffee Creek is one of our future planned industrial areas. It's actually mostly within unincorporated Washington County right now. So any future development will have to be annexed into the city and then have the comprehensive plan and zoning assigned to it. But what is form-based code? If you've never heard of it, you typically think of zoning as being very use-specific. It gives you guidelines on what can and can't go in an area, setbacks, all that stuff we're all used to. Form-based code focuses a little more on how a development functions and how it looks. So things like building design, site layout, location of parking, and really trying to make sure that the public realm that we create is of high quality, in addition to having a high quality employment district. And this is through the use of clear and objective standards. And that is probably what is of interest to you all. We thought it would be good to use here because we've had a lot of success in developing our other industrial areas and making sure that we integrate things like landscaping and street trees and, really kind of making sure that public interface is something pleasant and not just an industrial area that, isn't that exciting. So we took the best of what we've used so far and tried to actually define what those standards are. In the hopes that instead of our typical review process that does have public hearings through our development review board, that if we have an application that meets all of these standards in our form-based code, that it can be reviewed administratively. That cuts some time out of the process and it adds certainty that if you're proposing something that meets these standards, it will be approved. We do have 2 tracks, so if you are not able to meet all of the standards in the form-based code, there is an option to apply for waivers. That is reviewed through our typical DRB review process. And we have a pattern book available to give you guidance as to what, you're still meeting the intent of the vision for the area. It just might be that a couple of the dimensional standards might not work out for you. So using these 2 tracks, we're hopeful that administrative review applications can be reviewed a little more swiftly and expeditiously. That makes everybody happy. But we still have to go through the annexation process and the zone map amendment process. And so you would still have to go to city council, but we hope to run those processes concurrently since, generally we know this is going to be an industrial use. And that should take a lot of the uncertainty out of the equation. Big picture, we're really excited to get development happening in Coffee Creek. We also have an urban renewal area established here and to fund some of the infrastructure improvements that are planned. So if you're interested in more information to kind of get a sense as to what this pattern book and the form-based code looks like, it's available on our development code website. The easiest way to get to that is just to Google Wilsonville Development Code. It'll come up and there's a table and you can flip through the pattern book and kind of get a sense of what's envisioned for this area. We're really excited. Like Dan said, doing fun things in Wilsonville. So thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, King City.
All right, well, thanks for having me. In King City, we really don't have too much land left. We have about 1.5 acres, and I received an application for that just last week. So I expect that's going to be developed by the end of summer or somewhere there. And that's for a mixed-use commercial piece. What we do have, though, is we recently finished our town center plan, which is the area along Highway 99. And with that piece, there's opportunity for redevelopment for some mixed use and some infill development along there. But I think the big thing and the big reason that I'm up here right now is to kind of talk about our urban growth boundary expansion request that we just have into Metro. And we're kind of keeping our fingers crossed that that goes through smoothly. I know that there's 3 other cities up here that also are involved in that as well. That will open up the doors for us into the development realm and allow us to add about 3,300 to 3,400 units, residential units, about 50 to 100,000 square feet of commercial retail space around a new town center, centered between Fisher Road, where it'll be a Fisher Road expansion in Beef Bend and near Roy Rogers. It's about 3 to 4 miles south of Shoals Ferry, where Tigard's doing River Terrace, and about 3 to 4 miles north of Sherwood, Shoals-Sherwood intersection there on Highway 99. So with that, we're bringing in 528 acres, about 315 is developable. About 200 of that is natural resource lands, and then we have about 15 acres in there set aside for improved parklands. With that, we're looking for a range of housing types, row houses, we're looking for multifamily, we're looking for cottage clusters. We'll be doing all sorts of different housing types, and in that. So just to give you a timeline, because that's probably what most of you are interested in doing. For us, typically, planning permits, depends on the scope and size, scale, is anywhere from 2 to 3 months for a simple one that just goes planning commission review. If it takes council review, probably add another 2 to 3 months on top of that. For building permits, we've been turning them around in about 2 to 4 weeks usually. So it depends on how in-depth those are, but typically we're pretty responsive, like Cornelius and some of the other small cities. We can get through them pretty quick as long as we're not overloaded. And we maximize our use of contract work to try to get that knocked out. Let's see, so we also, inside that area, we have plans for civic use, city hall, library, rec center with some affordable housing mixed in there. So the city's in the market of purchasing some property out there right now. We're also looking to set aside about 20 to 40 acres of institutional land that we hope will either be the home of a school, a hospital, or a hotel in that general vicinity as well, and kind of market it toward wine country. So with that, we're working on a new transportation system plan through TGM. We just were recently awarded a grant with Transportation Growth Management to put together a transportation system plan, Parks and Trails master plan, and then a detailed market study on the town center to inform the master planning work. So we're hoping to kick off master planning work probably in late, about this time, I would imagine next year. And that will include the new code, new master plan, new community plan, and all the leftover details that I'm sure I'm hovering over and not going in depth with here. But essentially our timeline, and this is probably an optimistic timeline, is our hope is to get the TSP, Parks and Trail Master Plan, and the market study completed by January, February 2020, and then finish our master plan, community plan, town center design plan around March and April 2021. And so with those dates, then we'd be looking at annexations, entertaining annexations shortly thereafter, and developments to follow. So with that, I'm done.
Great, thank you. So we now turn it over to the City of Clean Water. You're not a city, but we have Clean Water Services here. A lot of you interact with them, so we thought we'd give them the 5 minutes.
I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes, but it looks like I've got 12 minutes, so.
The chair.
I'm Damon Reishi. I'm the Planning and Development Services Division Manager at Clean Water Services. And Clean Water Services is not a city. So I'll explain real briefly what we are. We're a special service district in urban Washington County, and we're responsible for managing sanitary sewer and surface water within urban Washington County. We do have design and construction standards that apply to all of the jurisdictions in urban Washington County. So that's why we're part of this development forum. In addition to being a special service district, we're also the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit holder that covers the sanitary sewer discharges and the stormwater discharges that occur in that urban Washington County area. And a lot of our rules have to do with that and what happens, what development's required to do in order to address those things. Many of you are aware that we got an updated permit in 2015, and that permit requires us to implement standards for hydromodification relating to new development. And we have to have those standards in place by April 22nd of 2019, so this coming April. If you're not familiar with hydromodification, it's simply the change that happens to volume runoff and the rate of runoff when you develop an area. And that can have impacts to streams. It can cause channels to degrade and increase erosion. So that's what we're being tasked with coming up with rules to address. A typical approach to that is to provide upland ponds to provide detention so that the runoff after the development is similar to the runoff before the development. We're hoping to take a little bit different approach to that ultimately and do stream enhancement as a large component of that hydromodification approach. Simply doing upland ponds doesn't do anything to address the degradation that's happened to those stream channels in the past. I'm not going to talk much about that today. We're continuing to develop rules. We do have, I think, a little fact sheet here that you can pick up at the back that goes into that a bit more. But probably the most pressing thing that I have heard from the development community in the coming months, not knowing exactly what those standards are going to look like or be, is how is that going to affect my project that's in process or soon to be in process? So we've been thinking a lot about that and how we might do something to hopefully alleviate some of that concern and provide more certainty for the development community. So we're looking at, in late November, going to our board with some language about how those yet to be written standards would be implemented come April. And specifically relating to projects that are in process and whether those standards would be applied to those projects or they would be vested under the current stormwater management standards. Typically what happens when we have new standards is that at the time of engineering plan review submittal, that's sort of the trigger date for what set of standards you're under. We recognize that hydromodification can have potentially a larger impact to a development, and resetting the clock on a project that's been in land use for months could be a real challenge to many projects. So we've been talking to the various jurisdictions in Washington County, trying to learn about the nuances of their land use and site development review process. And we're drafting language, like I said, to take in late November to our board that really talks about at what point in the process new rules would be applied come April. And we're leaning towards tying it more to land use because the potential magnitude of a hydromodification rule could have on any given project, as opposed to tying it to that traditional trigger point of engineering plan review. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll be putting out some draft language about that. It's going to be pretty short. It'll really be something that talks about maybe something along the lines, if you've submitted for land use prior to April 22nd and are deemed complete within some sort of time frame, under these circumstances, then the current rules that were adopted in 2017 for stormwater management would apply to you. So that's where we're looking at going. We're continuing to develop strategies for hydromodification that incorporate a number of tools beyond just upland ponds. Developing sub-basin specific strategies is something that takes quite a bit of time. So we're going to come out with a proposed site development code language in the first part, very early next year. You can expect to see the new tools and new strategies in there. That likely isn't going to be able to be applied to everywhere initially. So there probably will be some sort of default standard that looks more like what you may have seen in other jurisdictions in the Northwest. But with the idea that over time we will transition to a more sub-basin specific approach that uses a number of different strategies and tools, not just upland ponds, to address hydromodification. And you can expect that, unlike in the past when we've updated our standards maybe once every 4 or 5 years to sort of incorporate a number of things, we're probably going to be having to update our standards every 1 or 2 years for a while. This implementation of hydromodification is complicated, and it's going to take some time and refinement to get it right. So, thanks. Oh, actually, if I can have 30 more seconds.
Go ahead.
I have Lori Bunce here with me today, and she wanted to just let you know about some changes to our limited development review process. Lori? You may have my seat, absolutely.
And the county even made me my own little, so we can switch out here. I'll use it since it's there. Oh.
Does this work? Okay. So thank you, Damon. We just have a new computer-based web tool that we're using in our office, and we're rolling it out starting last couple weeks. We've been using it at the front counter. So we just wanted to give you all an update for those who do development in any part of Clean Water Services district boundary. You'll be able to use this tool. The objective is to cut down the time on our pre-screen environmental reviews. So right now we tell people 3 to 5 business days for an environmental review for that pre-screen, which just tells you whether you need to do more additional review or whether there's no sensitive area nearby, and you can go ahead and move forward with your projects at the city or at the county. So right now, if you go to our front counter, you can use the tool and you just put in your information about where your project's located, and it will spit out a service provider letter for you, assuming there's no environmental areas nearby. And then you can take that to your city or to the county and start your review process there. If you have a smaller project in urban unincorporated Washington County, what Damon referred to as our limited development review, those are like deck projects, additions, things that don't require engineer review technically or typically. The tool will also do an analysis of your project for that too. And if you don't need, if you're under 500 square feet, if you're under 1,000 square feet, those are triggers for certain types of permits like erosion control and water quality inspections. So if you're under those thresholds and your property doesn't have a sewer pipe on it or a storm pipe on it, then you'll be able to take that same approval to the county as well. And so you'll be able to get that over the counter within minutes, as opposed to waiting 3 to 5 business days. So our goal there is, I've been hearing a lot about electronic review and the timeliness of reviews. So for these really small projects at this time, we just want to make that process a little faster for you guys. And so we've started it at the front counter. We don't have any specific dates for rolling it out over the web or having it available for you to use at your home or office or at one of the cities, but that's our end goal objective for that. And what that does mean is that for now, there is an additional look to our service provider letters, because this form that gets spit out is slightly different than the pre-screen form that you're familiar with. So it says service provider at the top. It is valid. So that's just our quick overview of that, and just an update on if you come to our front counter and you want to get a really quick review, that's an option for you. Thank you.
Thank you. So my phone says 9:35 and the agenda says 9:35. So now there's some empirical information out there that local government can in fact meet deadlines. So we were going to do a panel question and answer. I think we're going to waive that and instead just encourage all of you to ask questions individually of these folks and encourage you to eat the food and drink the drink and mingle. So with that, I'm going to end it, although I'm getting the stink eye from Carrie Pack, who briefly wants to mention new fees at the Water District.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Pack. Some of you know me from my past days at Clean Water Services. I just had And our board just passed a new fee system yesterday. Some of you that do business with us know that we've never charged for inspection of your facilities as you're constructing. So we've adopted new inspection fees as well as an updated plan review fees. The fees are available, updated fees are available on our website probably later today. They'll be effective as of February 1st of 2019. I've also brought some hard copies, and I'll leave them at the table next to wherever is available over there. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Sure. Okay, we're done. You trap these people and don't let them leave without asking them a question.